So good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We have a very exciting number of topics here today. We're going to be talking all about residency visas, and we're joined by Scott Kirk, who is the founder of visas.pt, a name you might already be familiar with if you're examining things like the D7, the D8, or the Golden Visa. We're also joined by Inês Silva, who is his legal whiz and is going to really be getting into the nitty-gritty of all the questions that you've asked. So, Scott, for those who don't know, some might recognize your face from before. You have been on once before, but for those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about visas.pt and what it is that you do?
Of course. Thanks a lot, James, for having us on. I appreciate that. And thanks for everyone to tune in to listen to us, and hopefully we can help. For anybody who's seen me before, they may know that I come from a real estate background, which is a little bit confusing why I'm in immigration. But the idea is that what we do is we try to help everybody who's moving over to Portugal to not only find a property, but also to help them with every other step of the way. And sometimes people that are moving over here have no idea what they're doing when it comes to visas, or need assistance with NIF numbers and bank accounts, etc. And it took me a while to figure out that we should probably set up a service to be able to help these individuals as well. And so what we did was we created visas.pt, and we partnered with immigration lawyers and real estate lawyers such as Inês Silva to be able to accommodate those requests from our clients. So we're here today. Just so you know, I'm not an immigration lawyer. I know quite a bit about real estate, and from listening to Inês and the other lawyers, I've learned a little bit. I know that enough to be dangerous. But Inês is really here to be able to add a little bit of a legal certainty to the answers.
Well, Inês, actually, before we begin straight into the questions, do you want to give people a little introduction to yourself as well?
Yes. I've been a lawyer for the past 12 years, and I've worked with immigration for the past 10. I feel like this is a field where we can really impact people's lives. This is why I enjoy working, and that's basically it. Let's go to the questions.
Okay, fantastic. So we have quite a few questions to go through, and there also is a Q&A section in the bottom of your dashboard. If you fill that in, we will try to answer your question during the webinar. If we're not able to, then you will get an email back within the next day or so, hopefully with an answer to your question. So the first question and the first sort of topic that I want to discuss is the AIMA delays. So it's been in the news for at least a few months now that there's sort of been a strike, there's been a backlog, the backlog's getting cleared, things are happening or not happening. Can you give a little insight into what's actually going on with that, Inês?
Yes. So as of this moment, we have like 400,000 pending procedures. So
okay.
It's a lot for a country like Portugal. And as you know, AIMA is understaffed. So changing the name from CEF to AIMA solved nothing. They are still the same people there. So what we are doing right now to obtain appointments, as appointments are closed, is court cases. We are having to resort to court to be able to get an appointment for our clients. It's a very unfortunate situation, but it's the only way we are getting appointments. And actually, all of my procedures, all of them have been approved, and I've gotten an appointment. So we are in the right here. The state is failing us, but the only way we can correct this is through court and through the legal system, because the normal ways are now exhausted. There's no way to they say email AIMA, you'll get no reply. They say contact us by the phone. If you get answered, which is a luck by itself, you get the response, there's no appointments available. So the only way we are being able to help our clients is through court cases against AIMA.
Okay, so pretty drastic situation then. What happens if everybody starts taking AIMA to court?
Well, it's already happening right now. Okay. So at first we could get an appointment fast. It was like 1 week, 2 weeks, and we would get a response because this is considered an urgent procedure, so it's faster. But now it takes 8 to 10 weeks for us to get the appointment. So even through court, it's getting backlogged.
Okay.
How long does
Um,
it take normally, Anesh, when they don't go through the courts?
Well, they can't get an appointment. For
Okay,
instance, I have golden visas waiting for appointments, not available. People that came with visas, but for a mistake, they didn't get the appointment link, no appointments available. Article 15, no appointments available. So no slots are opened at this moment.
okay, so none at all. Is there, would you say that any, I know the golden visa is particularly bad. Would you say that there's any that look promising?
No.
Okay. And I think I read that AIMA has said that they're going to clear the backlog by next June, or they have some hopes of getting everything. What do you think this is realistic?
Well, to do that, they hired a task force of 300 people. So for 400,000 procedures. And then they are trying to hire lawyers to help them, but they offer to pay lawyers €7 per procedure. So as you can imagine, I don't see a lot of lawyers going to say, yes, I'm going to help you. So I'm pretty sure this is not going to be solved by then.
Okay. Just like it didn't get solved by changing the name from CEF to AIMA.
Yes.
So okay, in practical terms then, let's say someone comes to you and they need to get this appointment sorted. What's involved in that from their end, and are we able to talk about costs that they can expect?
Yes. So this is considered it's not even an urgent procedure. It's a very urgent procedure. So it is exempt from court fees. So you don't have to pay the court or the state to enter this case against them. Okay, you just have the lawyer fees and the processing lawyer fees. And the process itself from your part is very simple. You just have to sign a power of attorney to the lawyer and supply all documents and information, and then the lawyer will draw a petition, submit it to court, and then we just wait for AIMA to be notified. At first, AIMA didn't reply, but now they hired a law firm and now
Okay.
they are replying, okay? But their reply is usually sending the appointment date and telling, please don't issue a negative ruling against us. We already set an appointment, so please just leave this case. And this is what's happening, okay?
Okay. It sounds like now is the time to try and do it, because presumably more and more law firms are going to start offering this as a service, and they're not going to be able to cope with the number of court cases. So if people want to get that appointment, this is a good time to actually do this.
Yes, but it is important, and I always like to state this. It is important that when you're hiring a professional, you do see and analyze if it is a professional, because only lawyers enrolled in the Portuguese Bar Association can submit this case, okay? What's happening, and I've heard of, is people hiring people that aren't lawyers, but are subcontracting lawyers. So you never get in touch with the person that's going to file your procedure, and that's not correct. So you need to verify. There's a way. You can go to the Bar Association website, you can just place the lawyer's name,
Okay.
and it will appear if he is enrolled or not. Also, you can ask for the professional card to the lawyer, and you can see the number and place that on the website. So that's my advice. If you're going to hire a professional, do verify that you're hiring a professional, because you're going to pay for professional fees. So make sure you're obtaining a premium service.
Okay. And Scott, for people who do want to do this, what's the best way to get in touch? I don't think I saw Take AIMA to Court as a service on your website yet. Should they just use the contact form?
yeah, that's it exactly. Yeah, for anything that's not listed, just contact us and we'll see what we can do about connecting with someone like Anesh or Anesh. If they have a preference to talk to Anesh, and I'll be honest, she's the best person we have, feel free to specify that they want to talk to her.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's a good one. And in terms of, so there's two groups of people that I see that aren't getting appointments. One is people who didn't get their AIMA appointment set when they applied for their visa. And the second group is renewals. Are you able to get appointments for both groups?
Yes, you
Okay.
are.
Okay, that's good because the renewals really people seem to really be stuck.
Yes,
Or
but listen, this is an urgent procedure, and for you to invoke this procedure, you need to have a reason, okay? It is easy for us to state reasons, but in the case of renewals, as you have that state law that says that all cards are valid until the end of June 2025, we need to then justify the reason for us to be asking for an appointment, because your card might have an expiration date that's already passed, but it's still valid. So we have to justify. This is why this is not as simple as it's being broadcast everywhere. You need to have someone that knows what they're doing while they're following your procedure. Because if you don't have an urgent reason to file, then it's better for you not to file, okay? So you need to take that in consideration.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. Because one thing I do see people getting stuck, and a lot of people that move to Portugal are sort of retirement age. They may then have parents or family members that are even older than them. Suddenly, someone gets sick on the other side of the world, and they need to leave. And now they're like, "What can I do? I don't want to leave in case I don't get back in." Would that sort of thing count as an emergency situation?
Yes, that is for sure an emergency situation. And even if you just want to go home, you've been here for the past 3 years, imagine, without seeing your family. That's enough of a reason to ask AIMA for an appointment and to tell them you're in the wrong here. So yeah, it's been successful.
Okay, perfect. And okay, well that is a very interesting way of going about things, but it's good to have solutions to these things because it is a real problem that a lot of people are facing. Are people getting given visa IMA appointments when they apply for residency cards? Some people get it automatically granted. Are those ones still being given to some people, and are they being fulfilled?
Yes, they are being given to some people, but some countries are not issuing I don't know why, but their system is not issuing the appointments. It should be automatic,
Okay.
as the law says that you're going to get an if, an is, everything automatic with your visa, but you still got nothing. So
Okay.
the system should book the appointments, but it is not booking. And once you get into this problem, you try to contact the VFF agency or the consulate, and they tell you, oh, it's not a problem anymore. You should contact AIMA, and then you get stuck in a loophole. You can't get out because there's no way of getting out because there's no slots. So this is why we had to find a way to help these people, because it's really tragic. You're stuck and you
Yeah.
can't find a solution. So this is the solution we found to help.
Okay, well, I think it's fantastic that we've got solutions now, even if they are not ideal and not something that people want to do at the start of their new life in a new country. But at least there is something there for people. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think people are sometimes afraid to sue the state because they
Yeah,
are
sure.
afraid. But it's been very smooth on my experience. We've gotten the appointments, we went to the appointments, and some of the clients already received their cards with no backlash.
Okay, that was going to be something I was wondering, was like, is this going to, are these people going to hate me later on, and then, things are going to be more difficult later?
No, I don't think so. If you have all your documents and you're prepared to go to your AIMA interview, then you can submit a case against AIMA and everything will go normally.
Okay. Well, if you're looking for a new exciting life in Portugal, you don't just get sunshine and beaches, you also get the chance to take the state to court. So that is a fun opportunity for people moving to Portugal. Shall we talk about the golden visa? Because this is something that I don't think people are talking about quite as much, or at least people that come through Portugal aren't talking as much because of the backlog. Now, with potential ways to get around it, maybe it looks a little bit more promising. So, which visa routes at the moment look most promising? I know, Scott, you've done some research in it. Obviously, Inej, you're the legal expert. We'll get opinions from both of you.
Great. So yes, I've done some webinars with some funds and had a lot of people come through. And so I know, again, a little bit. Hopefully Adesh can correct me if my information goes awry anywhere. But as you know, the golden visas for real estate are no longer possible, sadly. But everyone believes that the golden visas have stopped, and that's just not the case. It's just changed slightly. And now the process of getting the golden visa is for other things other than real estate. So for example, you can create a business with 10 full-time jobs. You can apply for the golden visa through that. You can invest 500,000 in an existing business that creates 5 jobs. You can do a donation of 250,000 to the culture, the national heritage, and the arts. 500,000 into investment in scientific and technological research. And all those are options. My favorite one is to invest 500,000 into a fund. And what that does, it allows you to invest in a fund, receive a return every year, and that yield will not only give you a little bit extra investment return, but it also, at the end of the 6 or 7 years, you get your full investment back. And now the question is, of course, which fund do you invest in? And there's all sorts of different funds, from commodities to startups to you can invest in schools. My favorite one is one that's involved in hospitality. And what they do is they go in and purchase underperforming hotels, fix them up, refurbish them, and then put them out there and increase the profit margins that way. And it seems to be doing quite well. The reason I like that one is because the ones, for example, that invest in startups or commodities, they're quite a bit more risk involved. And the reason that the previous golden visa was so popular was because the investment was in real estate, which seems to be a safe investment. Now, the other ones don't have the real estate side of it, so they're maybe a little more risky, where this hospitality one has the hotels behind them. And what they do is they purchase hotels that are not necessarily the one-room hotels that everyone knows, but the ones that are apart hotels. So they have like one-bedroom apart hotel, which means that even if the hotel sector crashes, they still have the rooms that they can sell and recoup the cost of the fund and get everyone their money back. So for me, that's the best investment. One of the things that you didn't mention is that with the golden visa, as soon as they actually invest the money into a fund, that allows them, based on the new law that's come into play in Portugal, to be able to relocate into Portugal right away. So they just have to show their information that they've made the investment and all the documents in place, and that allowed them to relocate right away and be able to handle the rest of the process while in the country. So that is a big, considering the previous conversation and how long the delays are, this is a big advantage.
Okay, so because there was a lot of people waiting since a couple of years to try and get the golden visa process before this, right?
That's right. And based on the other lawyers I've spoken with, they say that that's no longer an issue. They don't have to wait. There is an issue, whereas if they come to Portugal, traveling in between the different Schengen areas after 6 months time frame could get more complicated. Again, at that point in time, you might want to sue and get your rights to live here and become a full-time resident. But initially, you can come here right away after your investment. And even for those people that invested before, they can come here as well.
Okay. And look, as an average person looking at these companies, and I've seen quite a lot of these different funds. To me, it's difficult to make a decision on them, as it is with making an investment in any kind of company, whether in Portugal or anywhere else. But when you look at these companies, it's hard to sometimes get information about them to know, am I going to get a return? Is this company going to be there in 5 years' time? Do you have any sort of practical advice of how you go about this?
Well, for me, to benefit the people that I work with, I did quite a bit of research, and I learned a lot about this. For example, they have funds that invest in startups. And again, startups are relatively risky. And I wouldn't say they all are, but the whole idea of a startup is high risk, high reward. And not everyone is comfortable with that level of risk. However, with other investments, such as these hotels, what you do is you look at not only the business, how long they've been in business for, the management team, the people that are actually managing the fund itself, and also the assets they're investing in. So in this case, again, I'll go back to the previous one, where investing in real estate is generally a safe bet. You know that tomorrow, if they invest in startups and that company goes bankrupt, they're going to be out that money. But in this case, worst case scenario, there's still the hotels that they can liquidate. And for me, that gives a level of assurance and is a little bit less risky than some of the other funds.
Okay, that's a practical way of looking at it. And I should say, it's not just the golden visa that comes with some element of risk. If you go for any kind of investment, they always have it in the small print, your investment may go up or down, and, do your due diligence.
That's right. If anybody's interested, I can send them a list of the different funds that I personally like, and they can feel free to contact me via the visas.pt website as well. I'll be happy to share that.
Okay, I'll put that in the link there. Ines, anything to add on that?
No, I think Scott pretty much covered it.
And then, so we have another question then on the golden visa, which is, okay, so I buy my investment into, or I buy into an investment, and now it looks like I can move to Portugal really quickly after that while I wait for everything to be processed. At what point can I sell my investment? I see some companies saying 5 or 6 years. I see some people saying 10 years. Obviously, they have their own rules when you can get out. But sort of what's the legal thing here? Do I have to wait until obviously past the 5 years, or do I have to wait until I get my citizenship?
Ines, if I may first, and you can follow up. So every fund is different, right? They have some funds that are specifically created for the golden visa, which means that 6 or 7 years to be able to get their citizenship, and therefore they insist on that time frame. But every fund is different. I mean, obviously, for example, the donation into the arts and national heritage and culture, you just expect to lose that money. It's almost like a fee for a golden visa. Other ones, for example, investing in a company, 500,000 that creates 5 jobs. You need to have that for the duration of the period that you're applying for the golden visa. So in other words, 6 or 7 years. Again, you have to always have those 5 people employed full time. So with some of the more investment funds, some of them do have an out clause. There is a penalty associated with it, because what they have to do is sometimes they have to resell that share of their investment fund to somebody else before they return the money. But the idea is that every investment fund is slightly different, but I'd count on doing it for at least 6 or 7 years. And if you're worried about potentially having an exit before that time frame, then maybe this isn't the best route for you. Ganesh,
Okay.
anything?
Yeah, that's basically it. Every single one of the visa types has different requirements of time. For instance, the labor, you have to maintain the workers for a period of time. So when you're applying for a visa, you should always ask for expert help. And in the case of golden visas, you really do need expert help, because all of the types of the visa are different, so you need to meet the requirements. So it's very exhaustive to talk about them, but I think Scott covered it pretty well, so I'm not going to add up.
Okay, perfect. So we'll jump on to the D2 then. Again, this is another visa that kind of doesn't get a lot of spotlight compared to the D7 or D8, and I think that's because a lot of people moving to Portugal are at a point where they're either retired or they already have some kind of remote job to bring them there. Starting a business might not be on their mind, but do you think this visa is overlooked? Do you think there's some advantages to this and people should be considering it more? Scott, I'll ask you that one first.
Okay. So in my opinion, I think the D2 visa is amazing, but that may be because I'm coming from an entrepreneurial perspective. I've always had my own business, and so therefore it just comes naturally that if you want to move to Portugal and you're entrepreneurial minded, this might be the right visa for you. There are some downsides and some pluses. The downsides are the fact that you have to have you have to submit a business plan to the government, and then from there have that approved. And there's other process about getting the right certifications for your business, the right, it takes a lot more steps. And then once you actually have the business set up, you have to have one employee every year that pays for social assistance. In other words, in my case, I pay for my social assistance every year, which is about 140 euros, regardless of whether or not I make a profit. And then you have to have an accountant on top of that, which works out to be about 100, 120 euros as well. So even if you are just doing no business at all, there's at least a 240 euro overhead after you've gone through the other steps. The benefits of it, in my opinion, are the fact that you don't have to show passive income like at the D7 visa. Not everyone has a D7, or not everyone has the passive income. So this is a benefit that way. There's no minimum amount that you have to invest like the golden visa, which is 250 to 500,000. There's a recommendation of about 50,000 that you can invest in your company. And really that's to show the government that you have the funds necessary to make this business work. But the most interesting thing for me is the golden visa requires you to spend a week every year or 2 weeks every 2 years to be in the country, whereas all the other visas, typically, not all of them, most of them require you to be here at least 183 days of the year. There is almost an exception with a D2 visa where you can request more time to be outside of the country, depending on whether or not you have a need or a business need. So because the idea is that most of the people that apply for this are involved in business, and they realize that these business associates sometimes require a lot more time outside of the country to conduct business elsewhere. So it gives a lot more flexibility with the stay requirements than the other ones do.
So let's say I was thinking of looking at the golden visa. I can get this and create 5 jobs, or I can do the D2 and I can do my company either way. Is the main selling point of the golden visa over the D2 that I would legally only have to spend an average of 7 days per year in Portugal?
Yeah, that's right. The difference between the golden visa for the 5 jobs is you have to maintain at least 5 full-time people, and of course that's not always the easiest to do for small businesses. And I think that's really the biggest benefit. Other than that, the D2 also has a pathway to citizenship and the passport at the end, and everything else is almost exactly the same.
Okay. Now you mentioned, and I see a question about this sort of maintaining the 5 jobs. Do they need to be the same employees throughout, or just sort of have 5 jobs that are current?
Well, Anesh might be able to answer this better than I can, but I believe it's 5 full-time employees throughout the term.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be the same people.
Okay.
Contracts might end, but you need to replace them immediately. You need to always have 5 people working in your payroll at all times.
Okay, well, that is much more simple then. So the one thing that has always confused me about the D2 is obviously you can start a business on it, but then there's this other element of it that is more sort of like a freelancer type option or independent service provider. But I've always wondered, like, why apply for the D8 where it requires like 3,200 plus euros when you could apply for the D2, which is less. Ines, maybe you could sort of talk about the difference between that element of the D2 and the D8.
Yes, since they created the D8, is now harder to get approval when you're a freelancer on the other types of visa. Before, we even used D7 to get approved if you were a remote worker, and now we can't get approvals that way. So since they created this specific type of visa, they are making it hard for you to get the D2 as a freelancer. So
okay,
it is possible, but you do have to meet the requirements, and the requirements do demand lower income than the D8, but it's easier for you to get the D8 than to get the D2 as a freelancer, okay? Because as a freelancer, you still need to prove that you have a stable income, and that's not easy when you're a freelancer. So that's the problem with the D2 for freelancers. If you have an option and you have the safeguard of having the income required for the D8, don't think about it twice and go for the D8.
Let's say I had 2,500 euros a month, which is a reasonable amount of money to live in, especially maybe rural Portugal. It's not enough for the D8. Do you think it's worth me trying for the D2?
Well, if you're working, how? You have to answer.
I'm a freelancer.
The problem with lawyers, it depends.
Okay.
Because it always depends on different factors. Because if you're going to tell me you're having this income coming on a stable way from only one source, like you have a contract, I would still try to apply for you a D7. Okay, I'll show passive, try to show passive income, even though they say on the websites, do not apply for a D7 if you have a work contract and are working remotely. If you can justify that you don't have enough income for the D8s, but you still have this stable income coming from the your work contract and it allows you to work remotely, I think we can get it approved. The D2 for freelancers is becoming really, really hard to get approved. So I wouldn't go that route if you have that.
Okay, this is very interesting. This, I think, is where the difference between a lawyer and the average person is, because I wouldn't have thought about going for the D7 in that case.
We've done it for years successfully, and then they created the D8 and kind of tried to stop it. But it's still a possibility because it's still income come. The logic of the D7 is that you have income coming from a source, and it's not going to be impacted by your move to Portugal. So if you can show that you're still going to receive that money even though you came to Portugal, you have a chance of approval, but you do have to justify it by not having the minimum requirement for the D8.
Okay, fantastic. That is really, really helpful and really, really smart. Let's talk a little more about the D7, because this is what people mainly interested in. I've had quite a few questions, and this doesn't apply just to the D7, but they want to bring dependent parents with them. Parents who are older, who may not have their own income, may have a pension, may not. What's the sort of criteria either for adding them to a D7 or another visa?
They have to be your dependents, so they can't have. You have to show that you supply for them, that you're the primary caretaker, and this is easy for you to prove because if they are older than you, if they have no income or they have a low income and they depend on you, when you move, you of course have to bring them. So it's not as hard as people think to add your parents as dependents. You do have to show that they are really dependent. So that's the way. Sometimes we need medical records to show that they do need a caregiver, but this is easy to obtain for you if it's really true. And if it's not true, and they are just older but have their income and are not dependents, then you can apply for their own D7. So
Okay.
the income requirement for the D7 is very low. So it's easy for people to apply and get approved.
And on the D7, we have at the moment 820 for the main applicant, 410 for a spouse, but there's no specific number for parents, even though there's a number for children. Is there a rough estimate there?
Well, I always like to, of course, we do it as we think because the law doesn't specify, as you say, but I always like to apply with at least 50% of the amount because it's an adult, okay? For
Yeah.
children, we say 30 because they are not grown-ups, but I always like to say that we have at least 50% of that amount for each parent.
Okay, fantastic. And I've had similar question, which is someone's already got a parent in Portugal, and I think this probably happens quite a lot. They've moved out when they were slightly younger. Now they've gotten to a stage where they need care. Is there some kind of visa or process where someone can come from another country and move to Portugal without maybe qualifying for the D7 or the D8 or something, just as a caregiver for that person?
Sorry, because the picture froze and I didn't hear the beginning of the picture. The question, can you please elaborate again?
No problem. So we've got a person who's resident in Portugal, a foreigner who's living there. Their adult children live in another country, let's say the US. Those children do not qualify for the D7 or D8, so they don't have a means of moving to Portugal easily. However, the parent who's living in Portugal needs care. They're getting to an age where they need assistance and they would like their children to come and look for them. Is there a legal process where the children can apply to move to Portugal to take care of the parents, at least temporarily?
Yes, we have to do like a kind of a family reunification, but on the opposite side. So we do have to justify that your family member needs care and that you're the only one that can provide that care. You have income that allows you to come here and support yourself, and we will get you a visa and approval to move to Portugal and take care of your elderly family members.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think that is really good to know, especially for the people. I've had a few people contact me on that one, so that is really nice to know. Um, Next question on the D7. So can we apply for the D7 before the passive income has started coming through? So I imagine this would be someone who's got a pension, it's due in like 3 months or something. It's or they're going to rent a property, but they haven't started renting it yet. Should they
No.
apply now or wait?
No, they have to wait because you have to show proof of an immediate income. It has to exist and it has to be stable. So I wouldn't even advise for you to rent a property and apply immediately. You have to have like you have to prove that this income is stable. So I would wait like 2 or 3 months of receiving this income and then I would apply.
Okay. Now, in terms of getting appointments at the different consulates, and this question is specifically about the one in San Francisco, but I guess, okay, something there about San Francisco consulate. How challenging is it to get a visa appointment at the moment, and does it vary depending on the consulate?
It does vary. Some consulates are impossible, some
Okay.
are easier but hard at the same time. So San Francisco, Washington are backlogged with requests. And since the election period started, it became worse. I have clients waiting for appointments and I visit the websites daily and there's no slots available. So even we had an applicant go to an appointment today and I was waiting for 3.5 months to get the appointment. So it's not easy. And I got the appointment in August for today. So it's not easy. It does require you to access the websites daily, multiple times a day, and keep trying. It is possible. I'm not going to say it is impossible like in Portugal because appointments do come, but you need to be always on the lookout for appointments. It's not easy or fast. And San Francisco at the moment, I've been trying and it's impossible. No slots available.
Okay. And can we talk then about sort of timeframes? Because this one is something that comes up quite a bit. People are thinking like, oh, I want to move to Portugal, let's say in 2025. When should I submit my application? And if I submit it, say like in January 2025, when's that going to give me appointment? And then if I get an appointment, let's say in March, does that mean I have to move in March? Or am I going to get, a month or two later? Can you give just a sort of broad overview of what that looks like so people could plan?
Yes. So the hardest part at the visa application right now is to get an appointment, okay? It is the hardest part because all you have to do is get an appointment, get your documents. Of course, it's not as simple. You have to get everything analyzed, but once you get the appointment, you go there, you deliver your passport. This is important because a lot of people don't know this. You deliver your passport and are without a passport for at least 60 business days. It's the minimal amount of time they are taking to analyze the requests. Sometimes they do come faster, the acceptance, but it's not being our experience. It is taking up to 60 business days. And after that, you get your visa and you don't have to move immediately, okay? You have 120 days to enter Portugal legally and you can enter twice. So this means that you should start preparing in advance and then you have 4 whole months to make your move. So if you want to move to Portugal in 2025, I would say please start the process now because we need to start preparing your folder. Then we need to find you an appointment. And that's the hardest part at the moment. And even after you move to Portugal, people think, oh, I have my visa and it will be fast. I get my residency card. As of now, it is not fast. Even if you come with an appointment to AIMA, the appointments are being booked for like 3 or 4 months ahead. So it will be a long period until you get your card. But of course, it's like that with everything, right? We have a lot of steps we have to fulfill, but with immigration, you do need to prepare and you need to prepare in advance, okay? So if you want to move in 2025, the time is now to start preparing.
Now, James, one of the interesting links that I've come across in my time, I've just sent to you now. maybe you can share that with the group. And what it is other people who have been applying for the D7 visa. This is all about the time frame that they've experienced in getting approved in the different areas, and it's really useful. There you go. So if you could maybe share that. This is all based on, I mean, there's no for sure way of calculating whether or not you'll get it in the same time frame. However, this will give you a good idea of other people who have applied for the D7 or the D8 and the timeframes it took them to go through the process.
Okay, that's really helpful. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, they're gonna have to scroll through it, so maybe it's best to send a link to everybody.
I will send the link. Okay, I'll take that off and send the link.
It's quite a lot of really great information, and it's worthwhile taking a look at to give a good idea. But as Anesh said, that this is from when they submitted it, where there's a lot of extra work that goes on before they submit the application as well. And of course, depending on how well they submit the application, they could ask for more information, and that could delay things. So it's good to be prepared.
Fantastic. Let me share that link then. And Inej, there was one question, maybe you covered it, but maybe I missed it. If I go and let's say I have my appointment in the consulate tomorrow, they're going to grant me my visa. Let's say it takes 60 days. So that'll take us to, the start of December. Does my 120 days in which I have to move start then?
Yes, they start
Okay.
at the moment they issued the visa. So they start counting at the moment they press your visa into the
Okay.
passport. So, but 120 days doesn't seem like a lot, but it is, because when you get to the appointment stage, you already done a lot of preparation. So by that point, you're prepared and eager to move, believe me. So
Okay.
it's going to be, and also you were showing some of the timings. It might vary because now it's worse, the backlog, okay? Because of the election period, there's a flood of people coming. So it got a little worse in some places, but it also got a little better in other places. So it does vary a bit.
Okay, so I know that if I get my appointment, which could take a while from what you're saying, I'm going to be without a passport for 2 months, but then probably or thereabouts, probably sometime within the 2 months, fingers crossed, I'm going to get my visa issued. Then I'm going to need to fly to Portugal. I've got 4 months to get settled. Okay, so
Yes.
that does give, once you actually get to the point of getting an appointment, then you really start to know when you can move.
Yes, you can start your planning, and the hardest phase is actually the appointment, because once you have that, you can have an idea of, okay, I have my appointment set for the 1st of December. I know I'm going to be able to move from March on. So you can make your preparations, you can start preparing everything for you to move in March.
Okay, fantastic. That makes things easier. Is still, is still not completely set in stone, but I think people can get a rough idea then. Let's see. So then we have a similar sort of one, and this is related to planning as well. This is to do with rental agreements. So when you apply for D7 or other visas, you need a rental. Usually it's about 12 months long, but obviously what a lot of people don't want to do is they don't want to rent an apartment while they're not going to be using it. So when's the sort of latest that the rental can start? Assuming you get a very nice landlord who lets you set it months in ahead.
That's the problem. But yes, the rental contract can start on the date you're going to indicate that you plan to move. Because once we apply and we get the appointment, we have to tell them, so I plan to move by January. So your rental contract should start in January. But the problem with this is finding a landlord that is going to grant you this. Sometimes you get lucky and you find a place where someone is going to be out by December 31st, and then you can get your starting on January 1st, but that's lucky. Sometimes that's hard to find, but if you do find that deal, it is accepted.
Okay.
Just a couple of things, James, if that's okay. There's a few things, like, for example, if you don't need to rent a place if you're purchased a property here already.
Yes,
right?
yes, no.
Yeah. And second of all, and this I think is probably the most important, we've experienced this just today, where you need to actually have the agreement with the landlord submitted to finances. So it needs to be submitted to the government and have a record of it in order for it to be applicable for the D7.
Okay, so you want to make sure that this is actually being submitted by the landlord.
Yeah,
Yes,
to be honest,
they
it's
have
actually,
to do taxes. Sorry.
Okay.
yeah, it's okay. Because, you know, what happens a lot of times is the landlords want to rent to foreigners and then they don't want to pay taxes, right? And so they don't want to submit it to finances as a result. But of course, what happens is when it gets down to approving the visa, you'll be declined because the document isn't submitted, and then the person who has been declined has lost the deposit, lost a few months they paid while they're waiting, and it happens more often than you would think. So it's really important to make sure that whenever you rent a property, to make it submitted to finances, and we can help people with that if they choose to work with us.
One other issue then that people come across with landlords, this isn't all landlords, but it's definitely some of them, is that they're asking for very large deposits up front because they say the person doesn't have a history of renting in Portugal. So it might just be, 1 or 2 months deposit and then maybe 6 months rent up front. Is this legal, what they're doing? And what sort of rights do people renting have to sort of go against this?
So it is not legal. The law
Okay.
strictly says 2 months in advance and 2 months rent as deposit. But in practice, it's very hard for you to find a deal like that. I work with real estate too, so I know it's very, very hard for you to find a landlord that is going to lease a property for a foreigner without having at least a bigger deposit. So yes, the law does state that, but it's not enforced.
Okay. It does sound like there's there's going to be a few extra costs and things aren't going to be perfect when you're moving to Portugal. You're going to probably rent an apartment a few months while you're not going to be there, and it's quite possible that you will have to pay a few months upfront as well.
Ganesh, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if if they submit their application, they can then can they utilize the property over here? For example, when I know you said that it takes 2 months for them to have their passport submitted. Maybe this is a viewpoint. What I'm wondering is if people can utilize the property here while they're waiting for their process to be approved.
You want to sublease the property?
No. Utilize it themselves. I know we had that one client.
No, you can't because you will be without a passport and you sign a declaration saying that you can't travel.
Oh, that's true.
You
Okay,
can't
I'm
use
thinking
the
of actually
property.
residency visa, I think, getting that approved. Okay, yeah, sorry.
I was thinking you want to sublease the property, and if the contract does allow you to do that, that's a great way of recouping your investment. But 90% of the contracts don't allow you to sublease. So
And this is really the main point of contention with any of the D7 and D8 visas, because Portugal is always talking about how there's not enough rentals for the local people. There's not enough properties for the locals to work, to find property close to where they work. But this is counterintuitive to that because people are now forced to rent a property that they're not going to be using, and it's really not fair, because as you were mentioning before about how, say somebody wants to move in January, they have to rent a few months ahead of time in order to apply for that they're not using, and it's just a big waste of money, and it's really my least favorite part of the process, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I know a lot of people are, renting for 12 months. They don't really know if that's the place that they really want to settle. And in an ideal situation, they, would like to rent for maybe a few months or rent an Airbnb like they used to be able to do before, and then have the flexibility to decide where do I want to live in Portugal. But unfortunately, that just doesn't seem to be an option. So we talked about when rentals start. One other question on the D7. The amount for this is quite low, 820 for a single applicant, which is the Portuguese minimum wage. If you come in at say 820, is it likely to always be accepted? Or do you find that people sort of around, 800, 900 euros are less likely to be accepted than someone who, say, has, 3 or 4,000 monthly income?
So this is the tip I always give to my clients, and I think it helps them have a clear overview of the process. If you're someone who's reviewing an application, are you most likely to approve an application that's on the shorter side of the income requirement, or are you most likely to approve one that's a higher income? Of course, you're going to approve faster the higher income one. For the lower income one, you might pose some questions, okay? Sometimes they might ask you, are you sure? Do you have savings? Because the logic of the visa is, are you going to come to Portugal to become a burden of the Portuguese state? Because if you're going to do that, we don't want you here. So you do have to show that you're not going to utilize our public health system. You're not going to be dependent here. You're not going to, God forbid, die here and need us to send you back. So this is the logic of the visa. You do need to give the officer the assurance that you're not going to use any public assistance and that you're not going to need the state to survive. So this is the logic. Sometimes if you are short on the requirement, you do show that you have some savings. I do have some savings here. Maybe I don't have a year worth of savings, but I have 10 months. And sometimes that's enough for you to be approved. But with 820, like the limit, they will pose more questions, and it's a process that needs to be well prepared, and you need to answer all the questions without them asking. So you need to add more documents. Your intent letter needs to be strong, and you need to show that you have some stability and security.
Okay. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And already I think there's talk of the minimum wage going up next year by quite a bit. So with it being going up to 820 this year and jumping up another bit sometime during the year, 820 must have already not been enough. So I can see why they would be more picky about people being too close to that. Travel insurance, then. This is another thing that people don't want to necessarily pay for travel insurance when they don't want to, or they want to get the dates right. It's definitely not going to be anywhere near as expensive as rental. But what date should people pick as their start date for travel insurance, and how long should they keep it for?
Well, the travel insurance is the same as the rental contract. You can set the date for the date you intend to move.
Okay.
So if you're having your appointment in October, for instance, I would not tell you to place your date for January. To give them some confidence, I would place it in mid-November or December. And then I know that you do not have to have insurance for a full year. It is not a requirement, but I would advise on that. I know it gets expensive, but when you come to Portugal, you don't know how long you're going to be without assistance here, without your card. So you need to be protected, okay? This is not even something lucrative for us. It's just an advice. You need to be protected. So if you can't pay for your travel and health insurance, if you can't pay for the rental contract, then you need to think if this is the time to move, because immigration is not as cheap as it seems. It's not as easy as it seems. The processes do come with obstacles that you need to have some security and stability to provide and to help yourself with. So if you're still on the verge of thinking, oh, this is too expensive, maybe wait, save a little, plan better, because you need that stability in order to live a quiet and secure life here.
Yeah, and it always does end up being more expensive than what you think when you're in another country. You don't know the companies, you don't know the rules. Things always end up costing a little bit more.
Yes.
Let's see what other questions we have. And I know a lot of people have been asking questions, and we will try to get through to some of them. But as mentioned at the start, if we can't, Scott and Inej will get back in touch with you over the next day or two. So then we get on to permanent residency. This is another thing that's come up a couple of times. So there's a few questions I have here. you can apply for permanent residency after 5 years of residency, the same as citizenship. Should you apply for both, or if you apply for one, does one cancel the other one out?
No, it doesn't cancel the other one, and you should, because citizenship processes are taking 2 years, 3 years, depending on the article. So you for sure should apply for both of them.
Okay. Yeah, because if you sort of renew it, you might end up renewing again if your citizenship doesn't get processed in that time.
So it's better for you to apply for the permanent one and then just wait your citizenship process with no anxiety.
And then the A2 exam is required for, especially for citizenship for everyone, and then for the non-EU EEA Swiss people for permanent residency. Is there any expiration date on this A2 for either permanent residency or citizenship?
Yeah, you should apply for within a year. But once you get your exam, you're going to apply almost immediately, right? So it's something that people do to apply. So it's not going to be, you're not going to wait for years. And if you do have it for years, there's ways to renew the certificates.
Okay. Because yes, if I know most people wait until year 4 or year 4.5 and then suddenly sit the A2 and really start learning Portuguese. But maybe you get someone who puts in all the work in the beginning. Year 1, they are already speaking Portuguese. Should they just wait right until closer to the date and then sit the exam rather than sitting it out?
It's probably better to wait because it does have, it's not an expiration date, but they do ask to have it done in the previous 12 months.
Okay.
So it's better for you to wait. But if you have it already, you can renew it. There's ways to renew it without having to take the test again.
Okay, perfect. And we have some questions on taxes there. I know this is more a financial thing than a legal thing, Ines, but a lot of people are wondering, is NHR coming back or something similar? Do you have any ideas on this?
Well, the NHR didn't disappear. It just changed. What people are asking is it going to go back to the old ways and include the retirees? This is the main question. And we don't know. They do say in the early beginnings of their campaign, it was one of the highlights of the campaign. They said they are going to bring back this requirement of the NHR, but now it is not being discussed. So we are not sure what's going to happen. I would like for sure to have it come back, but and I know a lot of people are pressuring the government to revert this decision. So I think probably it's going to happen. I'm not sure of the time frame though. I thought it's going to be at the by the end of the year we would have this solved, but I'm not seeing this happening. So now I'm expecting it to be on the first trimester. Hopefully it will be reverted and discussed and it will be included again.
Yeah, even without the lower taxes for everyone, it does make things easier just to have, this 10% or this 20% number that people can work out, okay, this is what I would pay in Portugal. Whereas as it stands, it is a little bit more complicated. It does mean that people really need to speak to an accountant or a financial advisor to work this out. And it's these extra steps that make things more complicated and put people off a little bit.
Yes.
And then in terms of when tax residency begins in Portugal, I know that when you sort of change your NIF to your Portuguese address, it's sort of a sign to the tax authorities that you now want to be considered a tax resident. But are there other points where you would be, where they would say, okay, you've moved to Portugal now, we're going to start counting it.
Once you get your residency card, the date printed on the card is the date you're officially resident in Portugal. So your 183 days start counting then. And as Scott says, for some types of visas, we can justify you being away for more than that, for more than it's allowed by the law. Like the D2 visa, we can justify it with business and business trips, but you do have to pay attention to the criteria because sometimes your card is not going to be renewed for that. So this is something people must look at.
Okay. That is good to know. You don't get to pick and choose when your tax residency starts. So there, I'm going to go through some of the questions that have come in while we were speaking. I probably won't be able to get through all of them just because there's quite a lot, but I will do my best. So they won't be in order. Let's start with one about the golden visa. I was told that parents over 65 can be included on a golden visa, even if they're not considered dependents. So would you say there are special rules for the golden visa that don't exist with other ones when it comes to
Well,
parents?
it's because if you're over 65, you're supposed to be a retiree and you're supposed to have your own pension. And so you're not financially dependent, but you can be dependent on others, on the other side of being dependent. So this is why. But it can be, family members can be included, but you do have to analyze case by case if it's going to be approved, okay?
Okay. So this person looks like they're going to move to Portugal without their wife, and maybe the wife is going to get to come later. I don't know. But in the meantime, she's a non-EU citizen. Can she come for more than 90 days in a row, given that she has a family member here, a spouse here?
No, unless she gets a proper visa, which is a resident visa, she can't.
Okay. So good to know if I can imagine there are situations where maybe one person's older, they're ready to retire and they're thinking, I'll, move to Portugal now and you can work for another few years, but maybe that's not the way to go about it then. Let's see. We do have some, this one comes up a lot is people want to know, once I get my visa, I'm allowed into Portugal, in theory, just for 120 days, but it could be for a lot longer while I'm waiting for my AIMA appointment. How much can I leave? And I know it's sort of is it a two-stamp process? And
Yes.
is it okay to leave to go to other EU countries?
No, it is not. Imagine you're a US citizen and you've overstayed the 120 days. But as you know, the law now states that all visas and cards are valid until June of 2025. So imagine you want to go back to the US to see your family. You're going to encounter no problems. You use your US passport, you enter fine. When it's time to leave, if you encounter some kind of doubt or question, you say, listen, the law says my document is valid until June 2025, so you must let me enter. So this is not a problem. But the problem is that this is only recognized in Portugal. The other countries are not recognizing this ruling. So if you do go to another country, they will not consider your card or your visa is valid until June 2025. They will use the expiration date and you might end up being deported. So it's not something I would advise you to do.
Okay, so if you're going to leave out of Portugal and come back in through Portugal, but be aware you're going to have to state what the law is, and assume that no one in any other EU country or a Schengen area country is going to recognize it. Okay, and is your general advice for people, like if they don't have to leave, if they're just thinking I want to go on holidays, should they just stay here for the time being? Is that the simpler thing to do?
It's the easiest way to do. And if
Yeah.
you're planning to go on a holiday, choose the country well. Be wise about
Okay.
the country you choose. Have a
Okay.
consultation with an immigration lawyer and we will help you decide where to go on your sunny vacation.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see what other questions we have. So we have some sort of ideas of, you need to have savings in a bank account here. This is normally, if I'm correct in saying it, is it normally a year of whatever the sort of monthly income is for the D7?
Yes, the requirement is that.
So if you needed as an individual 820 euros per month, you're going to need just under 10,000 euros roughly, I
Yes.
think. How long does that money need to stay in your bank account?
So this money doesn't have to stay still on your bank account. You can move the money, and even if you come a little short on the requirement, you're still going to be approved. The logic is they need to see that you have savings, but savings don't need to be static. You can move them, you can utilize the money as you need, and then take some, put some. It doesn't have to be like that exact amount on your bank. You just have to show that you have some savings. I've had clients that only have 4,000 euros in the savings account and they were approved. So it does require you to show that you have some savings. It's not, they are not being very strict about the whole year period.
Okay, that's good to know. And we do get some people coming through who say that they don't have the savings, but they do have the passive income. You sort of said you've seen that too. Do you think it's still worth applying at that point, or should people try and wait until they have saved up enough money?
Well, if you tell me you have 0 euros on your account, I'm going to tell you, wait, maybe save, stop the shopping, stop, just focus on your immigration plan. But if you tell me I do come a little bit short, but I do have some money, then I will tell you it's not a problem. You can apply.
What about if they have the savings, but they don't have the passive income?
Oh, yeah.
They don't meet the requirements for the visa.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough.
This is a big one that comes up, is people might have a huge amount of savings, but not the passive income. Is there any flexibility on the D7 there? Let's say you might have 500,000, let's say, in savings.
This is something we can work, because imagine you invest that money. That money is going to generate money. So once you're generating money, you have passive income, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is something we can work. And like I said, when you immigrate, you always need to have a plan. So probably this person is not going to have a 2-month plan. Probably she's going to have a year-long plan, because she needs to create a history of this payment. But it's possible, yes.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, that makes sense. And I guess it would fit in with what you were saying about people needing to have a passive income. There's another question there. How do people work out which is the consulate that they should be applying through, or whether it's a VSF office either?
There's jurisdiction. We have to see where you live, and then we have to see which jurisdiction you fall. Most countries now have VFS, but some don't. There's actually a list where you can see whether it's VFF or whether it's consulate, but it's always better for you to confirm either by email with the consulate or VFF, or with a lawyer.
Okay. And then I guess as lawyers, you know roughly how long it's taking to get an appointment in these different consulates. So if someone says, I want to move June 2025, you would say, okay, you need to start looking at that calendar maybe back in this month.
Yes, we can do that, but it's not set on stone, because it's changing. Once I started looking for appointments a week before I needed the appointment. Now I have to start 3 months before. So it's always changing, and they say they are going to implement ways to make it better. So we can only hope for that. But as of this moment, yes, you do have to start your planning a lot of months in advance to make sure that you're here on the date that you want to be here.
Okay. It does sound like, I mean, 400,000 backlog. That is quite a lot to get through, especially when everybody is on strike for not doing overtime and not seeing new people. It is ambitious to say it will be sorted as the time comes, but maybe they have a plan that we don't know about.
We'll see.
Yes. Let's see if there's any other questions. There is a question related to applying for citizenship, whether an individual can submit this one online themselves.
No, online can only be submitted by a lawyer or a solicitor. So you can submit it in person on the registration office, but I don't advise of that.
Yes, I understand that. First of all, you have the challenge of going to the registration office and doing it yourself, but also as an individual, you don't get great oversight of what's happening with your application for those 2 or 3 years. It's just sort of you submit it into the ether and you hope for the best. Whereas as a lawyer, you get oversight, right? You can sort of see
Yes,
where it
now
is.
on the platform are also it's being it was implemented this year, and now it's mandatory for lawyers to use it when submitting processes, and it's changing. So they are updating it and they are improving it. Okay, they say they will create by next year a new platform where it will be even easier for us to, because it's not very intuitive, it's hard to submit the processes as of this moment, but they say they are going to make it better. And it seems like it's better. I've submitted a lot of cases in paper and I had that code that you could verify, but it's better. I can access the process. I can see where it is. I can see if someone moved it. It's better. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. There is a question there, someone going back to AIMA and getting appointments. They say they have already got a family member living here. Portugal's a very family-orientated country. Is there any chance that they would be more likely to get an appointment as family reunification because they're separate from their partner, or are they stuck in the backlog as well?
They're stuck. This is why we are, I have a lot of family reunification cases that we are setting appointments, but through court. And we
Okay.
are being successful because people do need to have their family members with them.
Okay, that seems like a very reasonable case. I'm going to put the contact details for visas.pt and for Scott and Inej in the chat. I do think if you are trying to get an appointment through AIMA, this does seem like the way to go right now. It's not the one that everybody wants to do, but it is the one that seems to be getting results. So I will put that down for those that want to get in touch. Inej, you're looking at a lot of applications at the moment for all sorts of things. Are there any things that sort of jump out to you, any information that you can sort of give people, particularly relating to the D7, because I know that's the most important one?
Well, with the D7, one thing I want to tell people when starting this process is you need to be calm. This is going to bring you anxiety through the process. And even if you have a lawyer, you're going to become crazy that the lawyer is not working. The lawyer is working. We are trying to get you an appointment. The faster you get your visa, the faster we get an approval, and it's better for us. So you do need to know that you need to be calm. This process is hard, it's long, it's draining. So you need to prepare both emotionally, financially. You need to be prepared for this. So what's sticking out at this moment for the D7 is the bank accounts. It's not easy right now to get a bank account for foreigners. For US citizens in particular, it's hard now. Even today, I got a client ask me, why is this taking so long? I heard there's a website where you can do it fast. Well, even those websites that dedicate to this can't do it fast right now, because we are on the moment of change. We are on the verge of changing. So it was fast before. By the beginning of the year, if I wanted to open an account for a client, I would go there with the power of attorney, I would sign the document, and it was done. Now there's only 2 institutions opening bank accounts for foreigners that aren't residents, and it takes weeks. I've had a client for 10 weeks. The process took 10 weeks, and the account is finally open. Novo Banco now enforced something that you can't move the money that you place on the accounts until you're here. So it's changing daily. They are adding more requirements. So you need to be prepared for that too. This is something that's sticking out and that's causing the clients they are becoming very anxious, and it's nerve-wracking because you have your appointment, and by the time of the appointment, you might not have a bank account. But consulates and VFF are aware of this, and they are being very no demanding of this. If you don't have a bank account but are in the process of having one, they will let it go.
What we do, James, is we say, if we try to apply for the NIF number and the bank account long ahead of their appointment. But if it doesn't work out, we get one of the lawyers like Anesh to write a legal document that says they've applied on this date and what the process has been, and they seem to be amicable about that solution.
Yes. Even I had a US client go to Prague to apply, and she said, I have no bank account because I've tried. And they were like, we know how Portugal is, you're fine. So they do know, because it's happening to everyone and it's changing daily. So now, yesterday they asked for criminal records for a client. They never asked for that. So we never know what they are going to ask next. A client said to me today, this process is becoming a big surprise. Well, it is a surprise to me too. Changing daily, and this is why you need assistance, because sometimes you need to have someone help you keep your sanity. Say, this is going to be fine. We just need to send them what they need, send them the information they are asking, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I get a lot of emails from people, and they sort of read through and they're like, okay, I need to show my passport, I need to show these documents, etc. And they're like, they get to the point and they're like, I don't even know where to submit these documents. I can't find the documents on the thing. I thought it was going to be, just a case of gathering documents and submitting it. But the more and more I speak to people, like you, Inej, it's more that you work with a lawyer to find creative solutions against the problems that just keep piling up.
Yeah. As a lawyer, what you do daily is find solutions for other people's problems. So, and when do you find solutions? When there's a problem. So we just have to navigate this process and know that some obstacles might arise, but they are all fixable. We have to fix it step by step. We'll fix it, and you'll come to Portugal and you'll be happy here on a beach. Yes.
Yeah, this is the hurdle that you need to get past. But once you get here, it'll all be worth it. Scott, I think we're sort of running out of time for questions, and I've gotten through most of them. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I mean, nothing that hasn't already been said, but I'd like to elaborate on what you talked about. We have a lot of people, when we mention our services, say that, well, you can do this yourself. And you can do it yourself, mostly. But it is much more simplified and easier to have someone guide you through the process. And other people are saying, well, there's other people that charge less. Well, those people are what's called like relocation specialists, and they don't have the same kind of abilities that an immigration lawyer does, like Inej. So they can only go so far. And that's really why I created this visas.pt site. Because as I mentioned before, we have the real estate side of things. We're trying to help our clients connect to people like Inej, who is clearly very professional and knowledgeable. And we wanted to do it in a way that was not cost prohibitive. You'll see by our rates and some of the rates other lawyers charge. It's very reasonable in comparison. And the way we operate is if anyone purchases a home or is interested in purchasing a home, we include that in the purchase of the home. So they know that they're taken care of every step of the way to coming to Portugal.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that, Scott. Once again, I'm going to leave your a website address there. I will send it out to everybody else afterwards, and I will send out a recording of this. I'm sure people will want to listen to it again. But this has been very insightful, very knowledgeable. Thank you so much, Inej. You've given a real understanding of how things work, and you too, Scott. I think people will come away sort of knowing what they're up against, but knowing that there are solutions too.
Thank you, James. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye for now.